Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist, gastroenterologist, Steve Schutz. Stefan is here, trauma surgeon, Stefan Moran.
Little identity crisis there. He identified as Stefan.
I'm a wannabe surgeon.
How do you identify? No, you just saw me with my age extending $17 camera from Amazon, and you thought I look like you because I look so much older now.
I know. I'm certainly the oldest looking guy.
I hope you paid less than half of that for that haircut.
Yeah. only difference between a good haircut and a bad haircut, 6 weeks.
Well, 6 weeks, yeah. All right. Trauma surgeon Stefan Moran, automotive collector connoisseur, historian Adams Hudson is here, and we've got a bunch of stuff. I want to talk about Adam's trip. We always talk about if you go someplace and you do something automotive, talk about it and share it. So Adams has got some really cool stories from, I guess, North Carolina, Stefan. Safety about autopilot and Tesla, and then we're going to get into dark horses. That's Adam's idea, which is basically overlooked, underappreciated cars from the past, maybe in present. So a really good lineup today. I'm really excited. Like, listen, subscribe, all that stuff. We've been advised to say all that right up front, so we're doing it. And moving on, I mean, guys, Adams, you sent pictures. What a trip.
That was a big trip. Folks, I went to Highlands, North Carolina, which is stuffed in the far, far western corner of North Carolina, where the curviest roads on the East Coast, at least the curviest ones I've ever been on, are in that area. I believe the entire area around Highlands was drawn by like an anaconda with a pencil, and it just looks like that. All the roads snake through the mountains, and it's
isn't that like Tail of the Dragon area?
It is. Tail of the Dragon is in the same neighborhood, like between Asheville and Highlands, and its elevation runs between like 2,000 and 4,500 feet. And it's nice. It's very pleasant. Therefore, it's sports car country. And the folks of Highlands open up their town. It's a very small town by year-round population, but it swells in the off season. In the on season for them is the summer. The opposite of the beach. People tend to go there just to seek out cooler temperatures. So they have a Highlands Motoring Festival every year, about the first week or 10 days in June. And folks, I'm telling you, for a small show, when it would be considered small, I'm gonna call it like 80 cars, something like that. It is exceedingly high quality. It's not a cars and coffee. I mean, you have to sort of submit your car, and you sort of have to play into their theme. And their theme this year was BMW. Last year was Porsche. They had Brian Redman as the Grand Marshal. He spoke a couple different times, and BMW was super well represented. And again, a small town. I'm throw out a number, and I'm sure I'll be corrected online, about 6,000 year-round residents. But in this town of 6,000 residents, there was a BMW 507, a BMW M1, 2 Z8s, a 3.0 CSL, a 2002 turbo, a real one, and
Wow.
on and on. And that's just the BMW lineup. I mean, the Italian stuff was there, and it was a fun time, beautiful weather, and a lot of car folks.
Were you able to stay locally, or is it so crowded you had to drive a ways?
That's kind of the good thing. You almost hate to tell a yet undiscovered secret, because you feel like it's kind of yours. But, to the Cars on Call listeners and watchers, you can stay right there in the town. I literally walked from our Airbnb to the town square where this was held.
Wow,
So it's
awesome.
not super. It's not Amelia Island. It's probably what Amelia Island was 15 years ago.
There's 30 years ago, but
30 years ago. Yeah, that's probably right.
That's really awesome, Adams. And you said the quality. I mean, the cars you sent pictures of seem perfect. I find it kind of funny that last year was Porsche, and this year's Porsche's 75th anniversary. I'm wearing a T-shirt I got for Father's Day.
Yeah.
And then last year was 50 years of M, and this year they're featuring BMW.
Yeah, well, exactly. And maybe the show organizers had a premonition about how Le Mans was going to turn out.
Oh,
Not good.
Oh.
Not good for
Oh.
Porsche.
Touche.
Did I just say that? Anyway, and also within the Italian ranks, just so you'll know, I mean, this is a quality lineup of stuff. Just Ferrari alone, 275 GTB4, 365 GTB4 Daytona, BB512, and a new F8 Tributo. I mean, that, you know, it's just unbelievable, the quality of stuff. And you can walk around and bump elbows. I got there, you know, at Amelia Island, if you don't set your alarm for 4:30 in the morning, you're not going to be close to the front of the gate. I strolled in there about 8:30 a.m. with a cup of coffee and a friend of mine, and we just walked right up to a 289 Cobra, a real one, and all these other cars. It was fun. I recommend it highly.
That sounds like my kind of car show to go to. Steve-O and I went to Pebble Beach years ago. We stayed at B&B and we could walk downtown, and that was fabulous. But this sounds like a car show on the cusp of becoming a big show. But now you can go and you can enjoy yourself. There's no hassle. You can get into a restaurant. There's great cars, and it's before it's been discovered, and that's the ones you want to go to.
I think you're right.
Cool.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And keep bringing reports and again, pictures. We got to put those pictures up on the website because some of those cars were just fabulous.
Well, and plus I get to write the trip off since I'm doing the car, since we're raking in the dough on Cars on Call, I get to write the trip off.
That's right,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we need expenses to offset the gigantic revenues. Before we get to safety, you know, we've got a thing where we say, or we talk about shit George Cocker says. Well, I do have a line from George Cocker that actually does lead into the Tesla discussion, but there was a line I read actually today in Car Magazine. Anthony French Constant, French has 2 F's, is a favorite of Stefan and mine. And he was writing, he just is funny and very insightful. He's writing about EVs. There's a BMW, a Mercedes, and the Tesla Model Y, and he's writing about them. But here in this passage, he was talking about keys. And I've never thought about keys this way before, and I never will again now that he's written this. Here's what he says, talking about the Mercedes and BMW keys. Both BMW and Mercedes keys, open parentheses, the former the size of an elephant suppository, close parentheses. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, for listeners, Steve and I are huge fans of Car Magazine. And Car comes out of England, the UK, and they just have a different way of writing. They're very snarky, and they're all trying to outdo each other in these little smart ass comments. And I find it quite entertaining. And sometimes especially it appeals to my 13-year-old inner male boy, you know, who still laughs at a fart, you know, and so it's kind of like, I love the British Car Magazine.
I laugh that you laugh at that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm
I laughed out loud when I read that. It was so great. I'm like, that guy, he's had a lot of lines like that. He's just funny.
He's very funny.
And then on to George Cocker in a different issue. He was
and by the way, listeners, if this is your first time, George Cocker is our favorite current living automotive journalist, Kacher. He's German, and his work is absolutely, it's the best automotive writing right now that you can read.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And what he said about Mercedes and BMW, again, we have talked about this. So he's echoing us, and he said, quote, many who have sampled BMW and Mercedes EVs may have found themselves disappointed and frustrated by cars that are ambitiously complex in concept and yet so compromised in execution. Yes. Hello, EQS SUV, which I've driven, iX, which I've also driven.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think the sales numbers would reflect George to be dead on.
They just don't have the heft. They don't have that. We talked about the EQS not having presence. I think that's true. The iX just seems kind of cartoonish, very strange looking. And the interior doesn't have the feeling of quality that the sedans do, top level sedans do that are internal combustion. I don't know if they're trying to save weight or what, but they just don't have that gravitas and presence, which I think you need, especially given their price points.
You know, it was amazing if you think about, the EV, and we've talked about this as an opportunity for a company to have a clean sheet design. And if you are buying an EV, you want something that screams EV, that is brand new technology. It's like the 747 when it hit the market, something just outrageously cool. Lucid has done it. Tesla has done it. Amazingly, Hyundai Kia is just continues to knock it out of park with their regular vehicles and their EVs. The old manufacturers, the Germans and even the American, are long-term manufacturers. I mean, yeah, the Mach-E has been a pretty good design. It sold well, but the old manufacturers just don't have the fortitude, design, and they're too stuck in their old ways to reach out there and come up with something really new and cool. And like the Germans, they made it way overly complex. It needs to be simple, like an iPhone. People want the iPhone or the Google phone experience at their fingertips when they drive these cars. They want it to be a simple interface. The Germans have always had a difficult time with their interfaces, the electronic interfaces. They're entirely too complex. The menus are too deep to get to what you want. And once again, George Cocker nailed it with the way he described it.
I think you're exactly right, Steph. And you start to look at some of these cars, and I don't want to be a fourth teller of gloom here, but I don't believe Rivian, Fisker, or Lucid are going to make it. And that's really a side note. But look at their designs. What's going to make it is that they were fresh, groundbreaking designs with a very interesting design concept and language. And they do have presence, regardless of whether you like them or not. I mean, look at some of the way that they use their space utility, the way they rearrange their grills and their headlights and all the charging ports. I mean, those cars are exceedingly intelligent designs, whether they make it or not, because, the world is littered with bankrupt geniuses. And I'm afraid some of these genius designs are probably going to go by the wayside. But you're right. The conservatives, the Germans have taken far too conservative a path. They have tried to blend in when they should be standing out, and it's going to haunt them.
I wouldn't generalize the Germans in general. Here's why. I think that when it comes to looking premium, the S-Class definitely succeeds. You know what also succeeds? An F-150 Platinum. It looks premium. It looks good. It looks expensive. They really got that right. But the reason I don't say blame the Germans too much is I think the Porsche Taycan looks premium and feels premium on the inside. So I give Porsche credit there. And you're absolutely right. The Lucid Air looks premium. So it can be done, but it's not being done by Mercedes and BMW.
And I agree with you on the Taycan. Yeah, I probably should have reeled that in and said Mercedes and BMW, but certainly the Taycan is a handsome looking design and very fresh.
I do like the Audi e-tron more than the Taycan. I think that is I saw 3 of those in Ireland, and I mean, Ellen was like, whoa, what was that? And it just
e-tron GT.
The e-tron GT. Yep. I think that car they've done a fabulous job with that, and the Taycan as well. So
yeah, I agree. The e-tron, the reason I throw in GT is it matters. There's an e-tron SUV that looks, I think, just okay. But the e-tron GT, which is a variant of the Porsche Taycan,
right,
looks to me better than the Taycan.
Yeah.
So before we move on to, we're going to move on to safety right now. And hopefully, Stefan, you're going to talk about safety with no reference to suppositories.
Can it be done?
Can it be done?
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about somebody who blows a lot of wind and a lot of hot airs, Matt Farah. But I have to agree with Matt Farah. Matt Farah has been screaming for several years on his Smoking Gun podcast about Tesla Autopilot, and Matt gets clinically hostile, angry, and mad over the whole Tesla Autopilot issue. And I always kind of said, I'm not big into it, but a new article came out in the Washington Post by Faiz Siddiqui and Jeremy Merrill. And they extended the data that has been looked at by NHTSA. And they found that the shocking toll of Tesla's Autopilot since 2019 is 17 fatalities and 736 crashes. Great article. And what they attribute this to is Tesla's very aggressive rollout of full self-driving, which expanded from about 12,000 users to 400,000 users in a little more than a year. I mean, they really rolled this out. And interestingly, as you got this massive rollout of this autopilot, 2/3 of all driver assistance crashes that Tesla has reported to NHTSA occurred just in the past year. What's also happened last year with Tesla, some money saving. They dropped the prices on their cars. And oh, by the way, they dropped the number of vehicle radar sensors on the cars. Certain patterns have emerged with this. For motorcycles, the software does not do well with motorcycles, and it does not well do with emergency vehicles parked on the side of the road that aren't supposed to be there by the computer software. Well, Elon Musk has said that cars operating with Tesla's autopilot mode are safer than those solely piloted by human drivers. And he cites crash rates, but what we really need to look at, and hopefully down the road here, we'll get to where you have crash and fatalities per million vehicle miles traveled. That is really the statistic. See, that's the statistic that when you want to look at true fatality rates, that's the one that matters, because it's how many deaths occur every million miles of vehicle travels. So that, and but what the fine print and what Tesla comes back and all the time, it says, well, it's not really autopilot. They call it autopilot, but in the fine print of the Tesla software, and when you read the directions and you sign, it says, when the fine print says that you need to have your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road at all times. So how the hell can you sell it as autopilot? Okay. If you're an autopilot in an airplane, you take your hands off. You look at the gauges, you're talking co-pilot next to you. That's what autopilot is.
Hey, Stefan, don't they have devices you can buy that you attach to the steering wheel, which fools the system and makes it think that you have your hands on the wheel?
Oh shit. I don't know. I haven't heard about that. I'm
Yeah.
sure they do.
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon. I forgot what they're called. Adams, I don't know if you know, but yeah, you can buy those devices. So that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Here's what those are called, is evil, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Elon Musk also said, this is quoting, at the point of which you believe that adding autonomy reduces injury and death, I think you should have a moral obligation to deploy it, even though you're going to get sued and blamed by a lot of people. Because the people whose lives you saved don't know that their lives were saved. And the people who do occasionally die or get injured, they definitely know, or the state does. I mean, I know he's an idiot savant, he's a little bit spectrum, but what really irritates me the hell about this is that what we have, and I've talked about this is the rollout of beta software. Okay. We all are used to now getting our software on our computers, on our phones, and we know that it's going to be pretty shitty and not work right. But they're going to give us an update. Our iPhones are constantly updating. There is absolutely zero tolerance in my mind for rolling out beta software on our highways. Zero, none. And I do like that General Motors is rolling out some more autopilot, but they're limiting it to certain stretches of highway. The Europeans have done this. It's only limited to certain highways, but just to roll this out autopilot that you can drive anywhere the car thinks it can read. I just think that's a bunch of bullshit, and it's costing lives.
Well, and it's so pretty dang arrogant. I don't want to interrupt. I want you to continue with your point, but it's pretty arrogant. When you think about software rollouts, when it's almost always the first wave of customers, the early adopters, those are the folks who are really testing your software.
Right.
Well, that's fine.
We've talked,
but you're not killing anybody. You're not putting other people at risk when you do that. When you throw an automobile out there and say, oh, it's autonomous, you can just set it out on the road at 70 miles an hour. That is putting people at risk. It's more than just an accounting glitch.
Yeah, and we've talked previously about how Tesla owners are more forgiving and they are more willing to be beta testers. The problem, of course, is that when you're talking about an automobile, you're now including cars around you, and the cars around you and emergency vehicles, those people are not consenting to the beta test.
Exactly. And think about this. In February, Tesla recalled 360,000 vehicles equipped with full self-driving over concern that the software prompted its vehicle to disobey traffic lights, stop signs, and speed limits. 360. So think about it. 360,000 cars out there driving with beta software that aren't following the basic rules of the road. And oh, by the way, the other thing with these cars is the emergency automatic braking. There's been several reports of crashes where they're going down the interstate, the software reads something and comes to a stop and causes a pile up on the road. You know, we are going to get there. And there's no doubt that there will be autopilot software that is safer than better than the average human driving the vehicle. We will get there. There's no doubt in my mind. But right now, it is beta software, and NHTSA needs to step it up. I mean, they need to reel this in and get this under better control. I think the Europeans are way ahead of this on us, and we need to make some changes.
I agree, and I think they need to strike the whole line about, oh, you can put it on autonomous driving, but you need to be keeping your hands on the wheel and your feet perched above the brake. I mean, what's the point of having it? Self-defeating. Right. It's like saying, okay, right, I'm going to sell you a ladder, and I'm not going to put any warnings on it other than saying, please do not climb on this ladder. Keep your feet firmly on the ground. I mean,
it's like selling a parachute and saying, don't jump out of the airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's what's interesting. If we have any lawyers that are listening, a great article by Koopman and Whidden. It's called A Reasonable Driver Standard for Automotive Vehicle Safety. So what they are pushing for is that basically that all this software has to perform as a reasonable driver, an average driver as the minimum performance requirement. So yeah, things going down the interstate, it doesn't see emergency vehicle. That's not the standard. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes legally and where it's going in the courts. I mean, they have such deep pockets now that they're paying these people out. But as there are more and more Teslas and automated vehicles on the road, those pockets are going to get smaller and smaller. And you can't put a price on a single human life for this. So
no, you know what this reminds me of? This is going to be now twice in 2 weeks where my son Patrick features in a conversation, but we were talking about AI, and I brought up the example. I think we're all familiar with it. A couple of lawyers wrote a brief and they gave it to a judge, and the judge or the clerks looked up the case law cited in this brief, and none of the case law existed. So they went back to lawyers. They said, these cases that you cited don't exist. And the lawyers said, oh, we didn't know that. We had ChatGPT write the brief. And I told Patrick about this. I said, how does this happen? And he said, oh yeah, there's a term for it where AI just makes shit up. Stefan, that's your expression.
Yeah, MSU, man.
So
make shit up.
He said ChatGPT, if it doesn't know, will make stuff up. And
I guess just like a human, we're all, I mean, they lie. I guess the computers now learned from us how to lie like a human.
Well, it's not lying because it's unintentional, but what Patrick said is, oh yeah, programmers call this hallucinating. He said the AI would just hallucinate. That's the term.
Wow. I had no idea.
So maybe
I had no idea about that either. I mean, well, I did hear about that attorney's case, citing the exact cases and the dates that it happened and what it was, the state of Connecticut versus somebody completely fictitious. But I feel like there's some credence to Steph's comment. They learn from us. We're the source material, and if they learn how to embellish and or lie, I'm afraid that's really our fault. But that's AI scares me to death. I don't see a lot of benefit.
I mean, humans are very good at telling tall tales and lies, especially the more beer you drink. And computers are learning from us, So they're getting intoxicated on electrons, I guess.
Yeah.
we had a fighter pilot, Brett Williams, on, and he said that fighter pilot stories have to be at least 10% true. For AI doesn't have to be true at all.
AI would make a good fighter pilot then.
So, all right. Thank you for that, Stefan. I think this is, another thing that's going to be worth watching, Stefan, is LiDAR. And LiDAR, of course, enhances self-driving vehicles. And Tesla does not use LiDAR. All other manufacturers do. And I want to throw out a line here. This has nothing to do with safety. but I think it's funny. People talk about autonomous vehicles, and a guy named Alex Roy, who's on a podcast called the Autonicast, said a couple years ago something I'll never forget. He said, "These are self-driving cars. They're not autonomous." He said, "If they were autonomous, you'd say drive me home, and they'd say no."
That's right.
I guess they took the Y. I guess that car is an XY and not an XX. I mean, so.
All right, Adams, your idea, which I really liked, was to talk about dark horses. And I don't know where you got the name, except I guess from the Mustang that's coming up. But I like the name. Tell our listeners what you're talking about, because we have a list. So we each have a list. So tell us about dark horses.
Well, dark horses, of course, it's sort of like a betting term. The horse that's not supposed to win and the odds are against it. And there are a lot of automobiles. And by the way, listeners, if this segment pulls well, it was my idea. If it fails, you heard Steve say he loved it. So just keep that in mind moving forward. But these are automobiles that just didn't quite get a fair shake. They were brought out by a manufacturer, maybe amid a little bit of fanfare. They launched the vehicle, and it had an okay life, and it had a decent design premise, but it deserved either better marketing, a better launch, kind of reviews by journalists. It deserved maybe a better powertrain, a better chassis. It just deserved a little bit something better, but then the car went away. It got axed, and that's what this segment's about. And we're each going to pick 5.
Yeah, I think I'll throw one out. I think this came up in some context, and you said that's a dark horse. It's a car that was really good and didn't give credit. So just to introduce the subject, I'll use your example, which was the Audi TT RS.
There you go. Good one. Good start.
And you mentioned that as a car that gets no respect, or maybe I had mentioned it and you said that's a car that got no respect. It's a dark horse. So yeah, I like it. Stefan, you must like this list.
Well, this list kind of reminds me of, in college, man, you see a smoking hot girl at the fraternity party, and then she opens in your mouth and like, Lord, oh well, and you move on to the next. So yeah, I did enjoy this list.
I usually didn't move on. Anyway, I would wait till I struck out.
Worth one date,
I'd wait till I struck out. All right, who should go first? I mean, Adams, I guess you go first because it was your idea.
I'm still sort of, my head's kind of spinning from the smoking girl who opened her mouth, and that was really the advent of speed dating. You could talk to a chick for about 90 seconds and go, I am no longer interested. You went from a 10 across the room to about a 6.5, and I'm done here. So, all right. Well, I presume, I guess I'll just go ahead and throw out the Audi TT. The Audi TT, when it was launched in 1998, it was launched on the heels of the Porsche Boxster. And the Boxster was a groundbreaking, lovely looking sort of retro-esque sort of design. The Audi TT is launched amid what people call the Bauhaus design, and it's a very cool look. It was a different look. It was an Audi, so of course it had 4-wheel drive, and it won all kind of design awards. And it was like a slightly more diminutive Boxster, but it had a little back seat. And that car just never quite got off the ground. And in various guises, it then grew into a V6, and then the TTRS, like Steve opened the segment up mentioning. I mean, that car. And let me make sure I've got this right. That car ended up 400 horsepower. I mean, they fixed the performance problem with that car, but you just never hear anything about them. The R8 got the love, and other Audis got the love, but the TT just sort of languished in the showroom, and it's still, I think, a fairly attractive car and a decent package. There are scads of them available. And you can get them in every configuration you ever wanted. Probably to end this little moment about the TT's very little press that it gets would be maybe the 2005 TT Quattro Sport. There were only 800 of those produced, in case you wanted a future collectible. What do you guys think?
I've always loved the TT. It is a product of Ferdinand Piëch. He went to a designer and said, make me something. And for that reason. It has a 5-cylinder engine. A 5-cylinder engine was also the brainchild of Ferdinand Piëch. He created one for Mercedes in like 1974. And he always used, the Audi Quattros of the 80s that are famous had 5-cylinder engines. It was kind of his thing. They made a lot of power. They had a distinctive sound.
I think it was a super cool car at the time, but to me, it's an amazing package, amazing vehicle. And I thought it was the coolest design when it first came out. And I remember, Steve, when we went to Sonoma Valley to the Audi R8 driving school, the lead driver instructor, he was in a TT ahead of us, and we couldn't catch him in the R8.
Couldn't keep up.
I couldn't even keep up.
Interesting. Wow.
But to me, it's kind of like the Lexus SC, that it was super cool when it came out, but I don't know if that design is going to survive the test of time. Now, maybe in 50 years, it'll be cool looking, but I think it's going to be a long time before retro that design is cool again. But I do like the car. I think it's a great package, but I just don't know if that design is going to survive. I think it's
All right.
design
Number two.
issue.
Number
All
two.
right. Yeah.
Are we moving on to a different selector?
No, you just go.
Oh, it's still
go
me.
through your
It's
five.
still
Yeah.
me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take one that I know you guys have on your list. So I'm snatching this.
Okay.
Are we ready? The
Flux
Cadillac-
capacitor.
Who?
The flux capacitor.
I'll leave that one for you. You can take
Okay. All right.
the Cadillac CTS-V wagon. I'm
Yeah.
a wagon fan, and that car came out, and people keep saying, "Oh, we need to bring back the American wagon. That'd be so awesome to have the American wagon do well again." Cadillac brings out this thing with the 556 horsepower Corvette motor in it, 0 to 60 in either 3.9 or 4.1, depending on who you believe. It'll storm all the way up to 185 miles an hour. Pretty good looking car, a little awkward in the C-pillar, but aside from that, look at what they've done collector wise. It's like people went, "Whoa, they made that," and now people are paying over sticker for them.
Hey, I've got one. I have one of my picks goes along with yours. We'll talk about them both in the same breath. Dodge Magnum SRT with the 6.1 Hemi, 425 horsepower.
Dude,
That's a Dodge station wagon.
I got you can't see this, but that was my alternate. But in case one of you stole it, I agree with you. Go.
Yeah. So
That's
right
a
along,
guy-
you're saying those to me are two, shooting brakes, as the English call them. I love them. You're right. Dark horses. They're fabulous.
Yeah, they get a Magnum black on black with black wheels. You can't beat it.
Greatest exhaust note too. Wonderful
Mm.
V8 Burble.
Yeah. So
Oh, am I still
Keep going.
keep going.
I tell you what, you guys just take a break. I got the rest of the show. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I'll jump in there with
We've
one.
got it.
I'll
Go
jump
ahead.
in
Go
there.
ahead.
Okay, here's one dark horse that I'll never forget when Glenn Weiss was his name, lived across from us in O'Fallon, Illinois. And this is I was in probably 7th grade, and his mom drove up the driveway in a 63 Studebaker Avanti with the supercharged V8 in light blue.
Crazy.
I'm like, what is that? And not
That's
only
good.
that,
That was another one, an alternate, man. I'm telling you, I totally agree.
but let me tell you why that car was such a dark horse. Because think about the two-door Monte Carlo, Oldsmobile, Grand Prix that came out in the early 70s. What were they all takeoffs of? The Studebaker Avanti in terms of
Avanti,
size and everything.
Yeah.
That to me, that car deserves a lot more love than it gets.
Personal
great-
luxury coupe. Yeah.
Yep, it was a Raymond Loewy design, and you folks can look up, listeners look up Loewy. That guy designed everything from ballpoint pens to stoves to automobiles, obviously. And he came up with that design, and I swear, this is somebody's going to say, "Oh, he got that wrong." In about 3 days, he went away for 72 hours and came up with the bulk of that design. And it was a wind cheating design back in the day, a 289. Not the same as a Ford 289, but a supercharged motor. That was one of the coolest designs, a grill-less design. No, Tesla did not come out with that first. It set tons of speed records. It set dozens of closed course speed records in its day, and it languished.
The language. I love that car.
Totally agree. Love it. Love it too.
All right,
I'll
well,
tell
let me
you
go on.
what's
Let me
killed
go.
it. Here, side note, here's what killed it. They kept trying to resurrect that car and they made it worse every time they did it.
Yeah.
End of Avanti. Okay.
All right. So we already mentioned the flux capacitor, the DeLorean. It was, that was just going to be all the hype around that car. But by the time they ended up with this bastardization of a car that just had the wrong drivetrain, this awful V6, and DeLorean snorting up cocaine from his investors, and just went south. But there was an opportunity there. That car had so much hype, and it could have been so much more. It just, so that to me was, it was there, but they just failed in the execution.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Steph, but if you had to pick a motor right now that would not have been that stupid PRV V6, what would you have put in the back of it?
I'd have put I would have put a longitudinal straight north-south small block V8.
Awesome.
Small block V8, just same out of the same Pantera mold, a small block V8 with the engine up front, the transaxle behind it connected straight to the rear tires, just a la Pantera. And that would have been, they could have done it. It would have been, it probably would, maybe if they would even gone with the, I don't know, but that would have been what that car needed, and it would have been cool. But that would have been hard to get it in that package and size.
I think so too. The car was just too slow for its looks.
Yes.
Steve-O, we're gonna have to pull one out of you, man.
I'll throw one in. The 2010 Ferrari Scaglioletti 612 2+2 had the classic V12 Ferrari engine, was available at a gated 6-speed manual transmission. I thought at the time that it was a really good design. I think the design has aged very well. They're now starting to get a little bit more value, but you could buy them, as Adams would say, all day long at $80,000 about 5 years ago. So I thought it was underappreciated. You get a real Ferrari and you got real back seats. Yeah, I thought it was a dark
and you
horse.
get a 12-cylinder. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I think it is. I'm a huge fan of 2+2 coupes. The Aston Martins, the Mustang. I love a GT cruiser. That's just, I think if you're going to have you want a sports car, but you can't do the total compromise with the 2-seater. Yeah, this 612 Scaglietti, it checks all the boxes if you want to own a Ferrari for me.
It really
Absolutely.
does. It was so much better looking than the 400i or even the 365 GT4 2+2s that predated those. And then you look at it next to an FF now, and an FF is just a huge car. And the Scaglietti just had really nice, delicate proportions. I agree with you, Steve. That's a good one. I didn't even see that one coming.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, we've had not a lot of turnover overlap except for you guys. All right, so I'm going to launch here. I think an underappreciated dark horse car is the Porsche 917.
Oh,
and you guys are going to say, what are you talking about? It gets lots of credit. And what I would say is that is a car that saved the company. It almost killed the company because it cost so much, but it saved the company. It brought Porsche from fringe to absolute legitimacy, on par with Ferrari. And it gave them a gravitas, again, to use that word, that they didn't have before. I wrote down a list of sports cars that were available when the 917 came out. And again, Porsche was in this category. They had their 911, and that was, well, the 914 came later. All they had was a 911. These are car manufacturers and cars that were available that are now long gone. And the 917, I would argue, is what propelled Porsche to where they are today. And it's not appreciated for that. So the MG, the Triumph, the Austin Healey Jaguar, Jensen Bizzarini, Alfa Romeo, AC, Saab Sonnet, Volvo P1800, Datsun 2000, Opel GT. Those sports cars and those manufacturers are not considered legit, and going to Le Mans and winning, and then going to North America and winning the Can-Am, that pushed Porsche to where they are. And they wouldn't be where they are today if it weren't for that car. And all people talk about is how that car was a good race car. It was much more than that.
What an interesting take, because of course we've all read the glory days of the Can-Am series, and the 917 was such a, I think it may have been, and Steve, correct me on this, maybe the first 1,000+ horsepower vehicle in the 5-liter class. And Porsche had been a very strong player in the GT class. And then they just pop off with this 917, like truly looked like it came out of a spaceship. But I never thought about that as elevating the brand as much as it did. So obviously the racing paid off. That's a great point.
Yeah, I didn't think, I was just thinking about dailies. I wasn't thinking about race cars. So I could have added to my list. Of course, there'd be some Fords in that list, but all right.
We don't
Great
have
call
10.
though. Yeah.
Perhaps we have
right?
a future episode of Bruin.
So
Yeah. All right. So Adam's another one.
Okay, I've got an oddball pick here. I tried to go cross categorical when I first started making this list. Every blooming one was a performance car, and I thought just back it down a notch. So here's one: the Toyota X-Runner truck.
What's that?
I gotta
Do we
look
remember
that up.
that? Okay,
No,
well,
no, I got.
oh man, I can't wait for the graphic to go up because you'll remember it. But it was 2005 to 2013. Basically, it was the Ford Lightning of Japan. So the X-Runner was a lowered Tacoma with added on skirts and flares and a front fascia that looked pretty cool. And you could only get it in, wait for it, a 6-speed manual, which may have been the death of that car. It had wider wheels and tires, little tighter suspension. I'm not certain of this, but I do believe the exhaust was mildly modified, so it wasn't a big performance car. But it handled good, it looked good, and it picked up where the street tuners left off. Toyota thought they had a winner on their hands, and the world quickly fell out of love with it, and they didn't sell. I think they sold about 3,000 a year or some number like that. Toyota can sell those during a lunch break.
There's more aftermarket part things on that than a Las Vegas stripper, man. If you look at this thing, I mean,
Miami Grand Prix,
Miami Grand Prix, yeah. This thing is loaded up with so much plastic body parts on it. I'd be willing to bet it was slower than the standard one because of the extra weight of all the stuff they tacked onto this thing.
It was lightweight plastic, Steph.
Okay, all right.
But do we not think it looks kind of handsome? I mean, give it a little credit.
I'll give it a little credit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's better than a standard Tacoma.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, that segues well to one of my fourth one, which is actually it's the third, but the 2004 Honda Ridgeline and the original one. And it was great and it looked different. And they tried to make a pickup look different from an actual pickup. And they finally, after 7 years or something, they threw in the towel and they said, forget it. So the current Ridgeline looks more like a regular pickup truck. But I thought the original one looked, I thought it looked better. I thought it looked original. I thought it looked really cool. But the market was not kind to that car.
It was not. And I think you just said the word. You said wasn't kind of that car. I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Truck people were slow to embrace because it was built on the, help me here, the Odyssey. Thank you. The minivan. And so just that whole genealogy of minivan to truck, the real truck people said, no, thank you. But that was a cool, everybody loves the way that tailgate works. And everybody loves the way that there's that little drawer up under the tailgate. I didn't like them when they came out. And I'm telling you right now, I'll admit on myself, when I see one now in good condition, I do a double take. They look great.
Yeah, they do. And they introduced the idea of a unitized body for a pickup truck in terms of construction was what that thing was. But I wouldn't want to pull up to the Arley coffee shop and
no.
I'm just saying.
Well, and sadly, it only has the towing capacity for 2 bales of pine straw.
There you go. Yeah. All right, I guess my turn here. I'm going to throw. Let me see. I'm going to pick this. Here's another. I started with failures, and I'll end with the ones that I thought. So another car that I thought had so much potential and was going to be just cool and badass and retro. But it once again is a powertrain failure, and that's the Plymouth Prowler. I
Oh
mean,
man.
That's a
it
good choice.
it's this super cool Boyd Coddington retro rod, 32 deuce coupe slammed, railed, this whole thing. And then they put this anemic 6-cylinder engine in it, and it had no get up and go. It had tires, just these, I mean, baby had back with these tires, these wide ass tires. And you couldn't even burn rubber in this thing. And it's like, all show, no go. And once again, it's a drivetrain issue, like the DeLorean. So much potential, but just failed. And
Man, no kidding. You look at that car and you're thinking that has got to be an American V8 up under that hood.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it was a Mitsubishi V6. And it was like, oh my word, what happened there? I agree with you. And that little motor would not have had enough torque to turn those tires over. And that car was emasculated the day it was born.
Yep. Yes.
At that time, Plymouth had, of course, the venerable 318 V8, and they could have taken that 318 and pumped it up to something or turboed it or something.
So
They had it right there in their grasp. That's a good pick. Okay, I've got another one that I thought Stefan was going to say with that buildup, because this is similar. This car that I'm about to name, and I'll let your wheels turn as I'm describing it, has an almost parallel genealogy to the Jaguar E-Type, meaning that when the original launched, it was like, oh my gosh, look what we have. This is fantastic. Set the sports car world on fire. Jaguar dillied around and let that car languish and get fatter and slower and heavier, and they appealed to the American taste and whoever would buy them. And then Jaguar just quit. And then they resurrected that name sort of many years later, which is exactly what Nissan did with the 240Z. It launched a huge fanfare, deservedly so. That car killed in the showroom and on the racetracks, and it basically put MG and Triumph and keep naming them out of business. And then they come out with a 350, 370Z, same fanfare. Yay, finally, it's come back out with this new Z instead of that old fat ZX that they used to have. This is going to be great. And it just was a big yawner. They spent all their money and time and technology and horsepower on the GTR, the ungainly, less handsome by a mile stablemate, and the 350, 370 got no love, and it just sort of faded.
yeah, just sad because I mean, for our generation, the 240, and Steve-O owned one. We watched that car turn into that pig of a car with the T-top roofs and the velour interiors and the Luxo electric vents, and oh my gosh, yeah. And then they tried to bring it back out, appealing to nostalgia, our age group, and they didn't get it right.
They didn't get it right. They left us hanging. They left us hanging.
I went to a car show on Saturday, or no, I guess it was Father's Day. It was definitely not as good as the one you went to, Adams. And there was like an 81 280ZX there, and it was just as bad as we remember.
I think some of the technology got away from them in those days, and they just kept pouring it on, and the car just got more lethargic and worse.
All right, well, I'm going to bend the rules on the next one here.
Oh,
So
what a
Go! What a surprise! Go for it, man. I want to.
So we're picking dark horses here. So what I'm telling, as we were going from this age of EV and seeing the very slow demise of the internal combustion engine, everybody is having their last hurrahs. Dodge is coming out with some great cars, Mustangs coming out with the new V8, the Corvette. So we're seeing these last hurrahs. But what people are going to want in 10 to 20 years of these last hurrahs are going to be monster American V8s, or I'll even say maybe German V8s, but it better have a manual, because people are going to want the analog experience that they remembered. And if you've got a paddle shifter with a V8 or a monster engine, no, the dark horse future collector car where we all talk about the ice age, the extinction of the internal combustion engine, you better have 3 pedals on the floor. and a shifter to the right. I think those are the ones you want to keep your focus on. Unfortunately, Ferrari doesn't even make a stick shift anymore. But to me, the dark horse is the one. If you're thinking about this cool car you want to get, you got a choice, automatic or stick, get the stick, because that is the dark horse. And those are the ones that are going to return your money that people are going to want.
You know, Steph, I don't disagree one single bit. And there's actually a flourishing aftermarket of those who are converting F1 gearboxes out of Ferraris into 3-pedal cars with the gated. So what
Wow.
would be like if you were right now, again, I'm putting you on the spot right now, you get to pick one of these V8 engine 3-pedal cars right now at the end of the Ice Age. What are you picking?
Oh, the one I'm building.
Well, but
Oh.
the Cobra, but I mean, like if you had to go into a showroom and pick
Oh.
one.
If I had to go in showroom right now, I get the Ford Mustang Dark Horse.
Okay.
And I do the factory spoiler delete on the stripes, and I would just tune it out with the performance driving package. And yeah, because I'm just a huge fan of the 2+2 style. So a GT Cruiser would be, and I'd get the manual, and that's what I'd want to have. I think in 20 years from now, paddle shifter, yeah, it'd be cool to crank it up, but someone's like, wow, how do you 3 pedals and you had to change gears? Because EVs don't even have gears. Okay.
Yeah. No
So
kidding.
they don't
You
need
don't
a
even have
gear.
to do the paddle.
There's no paddlers. I mean, it's 1 foot driving. So I think of the excitement in 20 years to get to teach somebody how to drive with the clutch and the stick shift. So I think that's the future of the dark horse as we move. To me, that's, if you're looking forward to keeping something in your garage or buying it, better get a damn manual.
Before we get to Steve's next pick, it's interesting that you say that. You wonder, is this whole mentality of, wow, you're shifting gears, with your hand and you've got a third pedal. Are people going to be looking at this 0-gear EV in the future going, oh my gosh, a paddle shift PDK? How did you do that?
Yeah.
Is that going to be like too much trouble for people? Oh, yeah. How many muscles did you build up in your index finger changing gears? My gosh. We'll see. All right, Steve.
That's funny. That's really funny. You never know, right? So you can definitely sense a pattern here in my picks. So my next one is the 1995 Audi A4, and it's underappreciated because it was so significant. It was really the first, and it was a gigantic step to make an Audi the equal of, at that time, Lexus, BMW, and Mercedes. And Audi was determined to be the competitor for BMW.
Hold on, Steve.
And-
Let me just guess. Let me guess. Ferdinand Piëch had something.
I don't want to mention his name.
I mean, come on. Yeah.
but-
Oh, there it comes.
I
Here
think
it
this is
comes.
pretty cool.
His love, Steve-O's love child.
I am just pointing out a little reality here. And by the way, most people
He's
are
getting
unaware.
misty-eyed over there. You can tell.
Yes, he
Most
is.
people are unaware that the 1995 A4 is the first model that had a letter and one number. It was the first one. It used to be 100, 200, Quattro, all these different things. The A5 was the first one. They said A5, or I'm sorry, A4. And the reason it was 4 was that it was competing with the BMW 3 Series. And they said, yeah, we're just like you, but one better. And the A6 competed with the 5 Series, but it was one better. The 8 competed with the 7 Series BMW. So it was very intentional, but that car was good looking, and it was extremely, so this is the first dark horse that sold great. It sold amazingly well. And what I'm not saying that the market didn't appreciate, the market appreciated it very much. And you see one today, it still looks good. What I am saying, it was underappreciated that one car turned Audi from basically Volkswagen Plus to the equal of BMW, Mercedes, and Lexus.
Wow. Good summary. I mean, yeah, that just makes you put your hand over your heart and, wave the Audi flag. And it's during the period when the A4 was launched. I remember I don't think I knew hardly anyone who owned an Audi. I knew a couple of folks who were into the 5000s way back when, but man, when the A4 launched, half the people I knew either were buying one or were going to be getting one.
Yeah.
huge success for Audi. And that whole design, I mean, they took that design to the absolute limit.
Stefan's speechless. I didn't even mention the name Piek. Well,
I was waiting for him. Please
go
tell
on,
me there
state
has
it.
to be. There
But I
has to
could-
be something there with Piek with the A4. There has to be.
So taking any personality out of it for the company, it was transformational.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. But I
It
still
was.
believe there has to be a connection to Piek somewhere in there.
All right, you found it. All right, I guess that's kind of it. I mean, we're almost out of time. Unless one of you guys has one you really want to wave the flag on.
I have one, just would be real brief. The BMW i8, I think it's super
oh,
cool.
that's good.
I think
That's a
that
good
it's
pick.
super cool. It's great technology. I still think it's super cool today. And it just never got bought or loved. And I mean, and I just think the i8 and the i3 as well were just fantastic leaps forward into the future of EV. And they decided, you know what, EVs are going to look different in BMW these are more hybrids, but they sketched the design of what a car should look like and be. And I just feel like they didn't get any love. And I think it's a dark horse. And I think it's going to be a very cool car down the road at any car show. You pull up on one of those. Yep. I think that's a real car. That's a cool car to have.
I think so too. And man, oh man, you know, with the crazy hybrid drivetrain and the 3-cylinder motor and a combined horsepower of somewhere in the 357 range, I don't remember exactly, and a pretty dang good looking car and a lot of innovative features. And you're right, they never waved it and said, hey, look, this is the future. It sort of came out and people went, oh yeah, that's good. And I guess it faded out within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Don't see many around. And I mean, I think it's a pretty handsome looking car too.
Here's the flip side of that. And Stefan, I think it's a great choice because that design looks just as futuristic now as when the car launched. But here's the knock on it. It's like, I'm going to spend 120 or whatever $1,000 and it has a mini engine.
Yeah. And kind of like, Cocker said, a little over complex, just like George Cocker said, and this kind of fits his definition of saying. So.
I tell you what, if any of the listeners or watchers out there want to raise their opinion or vote to the contrary on a BMW i8, look up the series, How It's Made. And they did one on the i8, and you will be astounded at the new technology that was pioneered with the i8. It's unbelievable. Yeah, the 3-cylinder, the mini motor did not help the cause. That's absolutely for certain. But man, you see how that thing screwed together and the trouble that BMW went to build it. And I agree with you. That is a car that's going to be a 6-figure plus car in the future.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was a great topic. I loved it because I sat down a couple of evenings and just kind of brainstormed and really, really enjoyed that topic. So thank you, Adams.
Yeah, let me just name. I'm going to name one other car that we're not talking about. Just name Generation 1 Scirocco.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm just going to name that. I wanted to we didn't have time, but that's one. So
okay, well, I got to throw in one too.
All right, just throw in a name. Just throw it in.
Mitsubishi 3000 GT VR4 LME and sometimes Y. I don't know.
We talked about that show we talked about that car before you joined us. I was like, oh my God, that car. Insane. But
insane. 4-wheel drive, twin turbos, blisters where there should have been upper shock mounts.
And
everyone's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, here's my I don't agree because it was just too big and too wide. I'm gonna damn it by saying it was a GTR wannabe.
Yeah. Well, you know why I picked the Mitsubishis? Because they were so close to big success. They're huge manufacturers. They were one of the biggest manufacturers in all of Japan, including Toyota. And they launched this car with massive technology, including the world's first active aero. Oh. And the car just faltered. I agree with you. It was a big fat kind of car, though. And on that,
that's Stefan closest. All right, guys, Stefan.
All right. Hey, listeners, like, listen, subscribe, leave comments. And then for those of you that want more safety, want to hear a story from a patient of mine who tells her story, listen to last week's podcast. Was that number 69 with Julie Alt?
Correct.
Take a listen to that one. It's very moving, very different from all of our other podcasts. This is just her story of her trauma, accident, and her recovery. And great story. If you got somebody that doesn't want to wear seatbelts, let them listen to this one. And we'll
I look
tune in
forward
next
to hearing
next week.
And I also look forward to Stefan toward the camera again, lean toward the camera and get a close up of that hairline. All right. Till next week, people.
All right. See ya.